Good morning, class. So I think we'll start. We already have around 42 participants, so we'll start then. So good morning, everyone. I'm Suman Kumar Basal. So we'll be starting today with sciatic nerve injuries. So sciatic nerve injury arises from the sacral plexus. So it is formed by L4, L5, S1, S2, S3, and S4. So it is the largest branch of the sacral plexus, and sciatic nerve is the largest nerve of the body. So talking about its origin, so it arises from the sacral plexus. Now you can see sacral plexus is formed from L4, L5, S1, S2, and S3. So these are all spinal nerves. So each spinal nerve, as L4 spinal nerve, will have a anterior and a posterior rami. So from the anterior rami, each anterior rami will have a dorsal division and a ventral division. So you can see the dorsal division is given in orange color and ventral division is given in pink color. So the dorsal division of L4, L5, S1, and S2 will form the common peroneal nerve. So this will form the common peroneal part of the sciatic nerve. And the ventral division will form ventral division of L4, L5, S1, S2, and S3 as well, will form the tibial part of the sciatic nerve. So once this is formed, this is usually it leaves the pelvis through the sciatic foramen below the piriformis muscle. So you can see, so the sciatic nerve leaves below the piriformis muscle, and then it passes into the gluteal region. So from here it passes into the gluteal region and then passes into the posterior compartment of the thigh. So when it passes from the piriformis muscle below, then this sciatic nerve will roughly be in midpoint between the ischial tuberosity and the greater trochanter. So it will be somewhere in the middle. And this muscle will pass over the short external rotators. So what are the short external rotators? This will be obturator internus, gemellus superior, and gemellus inferior. So you can see this sciatic nerve is passing over this short external rotators. And in the gluteal region, this will be under cover of gluteus maximus. So gluteus maximus will cover the whole of sciatic nerve in the gluteal region. As you come to the posterior compartment of the thigh, this muscle will lie between, this nerve will lie between two muscles. One is the long head of the bicep femoris. So this will lie over the long head of bicep femoris and over the adductor magnus muscle. So this will be sandwiched between the adductor magnus in front, and posteriorly there will be long head of bicep femoris. And in the lower 1/3 of the thigh, this sciatic nerve will divide into two terminal branches. The larger one is the tibial component, and the smaller one or the lateral component will be a common fibular nerve. So now talking about its branches. So each nerve will always have three branches. One is sensory, one is motor, and another is articular branch. So this sciatic nerve will give articular branch to the hip joint, and sensory branch, it will supply the whole of the leg and foot, except the area supplied by the saphenous nerve. Now, saphenous nerve is a branch of femoral nerve. In this picture, this light area, as you can see, is supplied by the saphenous nerve. So, except this area, everything in leg and foot is supplied by the branches of sciatic nerve in the form of tibial and the common peroneal part. So, muscular branches in the gluteal region, it won't give any branches. So in the posterior aspect of thigh, it will give branches to the hamstring muscle through two branches, tibial branch and the common peroneal branch. So tibial branch will supply the hamstring part of adductor magnus, long head of bicep femoris, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. So this branches arises in the posterior aspect of thigh, and only the short head of biceps femoris is coming from the common peroneal nerve. So you can see this short head of bicep femoris alone is coming from the common peroneal nerve. Other than that, everything is supplied by the tibial component of the sciatic nerve in the posterior aspect of thigh. And here you can also see, after it arises from the pelvis below the piriformis muscle, it runs over the short external rotators. Okay, these are the short external rotators. Now talking individually about tibial nerve and common peroneal nerve. So in the lower 1/3 of the leg, this will divide, sciatic nerve will divide into tibial component as well as the common fibular component. So common fibular nerve arises from the lateral aspect of the sciatic nerve, and it descends down through the popliteal fossa into the posterior compartment of leg along with the posterior tibial vessel. So tibial nerve will just go down, and this will pass through the popliteal fossa into the posterior compartment of the leg, and it is covered by the your soleus muscle. So then in the ankle, this will pass deep to the flexor retinaculum. So this will pass through the tarsal tunnel, and then tarsal tunnel is situated behind the medial malleus, and it will terminate into two branches, medial and lateral plantar nerve. And before it divides into two terminal branches, it also gives one more branch, that is medial calcaneal nerve. So there are three branches of tibial nerve that you should understand. One is the medial calcaneum nerve, another is the medial plantar nerve, and another is the lateral plantar nerve. This is in the ankle. And if you look closely in this area, this tibial nerve also will give rise to sural nerve. Now sural nerve will have communication from both from the tibial nerve as well as the common fibular nerve. So we'll see about that also. But sural nerve is has bigger contribution from the tibial nerve. So you should know about three branches: medial lateral plantar nerve, medial calcaneal nerve, and another is the sural nerve. These all arises from the tibial nerve. So muscular branches, basically this will supply the posterior compartment of leg. What are the muscles in the posterior compartment of leg? These are the plantar flexor of ankle, that is your gastrocnemius and soleus and plantaris muscle. So these are the three plantar flexor of ankle and flexor of toes. What are the flexor of toes? Your flexor hallucis longus and your flexor digitorum longus. And one inverter of foot, that is tibialis posterior. So it also supplies the inverter of the foot, that is tibialis posterior, and all the muscle of the sole of the foot. So there are four compartments in the sole of the foot. All muscles are supplied by the medial and plantar division of the tibial nerve. Now similarly, sensory component, I will talk both common peroneal nerve and tibial nerve together. So now we will come to the common peroneal nerve. So common peroneal nerve, it arises from the sciatic nerve on the lateral aspect. So it leaves the lateral angle of the popliteal fossa and turns around the posterior lateral aspect of the neck of fibula. So you can see from posterior it comes anteriorly. So then it divides into two branches. One is the superficial peroneal nerve, another is deep peroneal nerve. Deep peroneal nerve will supply the anterior compartment of the leg. So superficial peroneal nerve will supply the lateral compartment of the leg. So what happens? This common peroneal nerve, it passes between two muscles, biceps femoris and lateral head of gastrocnemius. So it passes between these two muscles, and then in the posterolateral aspect of the neck of fibula, it will turn around and come anteriorly. Once it comes anteriorly, before dividing it into two components, it will pierce the peroneus longus muscle. So peroneus longus muscle, once it pierces the peroneus longus muscle, one nerve will continue as the superficial peroneal nerve. So it will run between the peroneus longus and peroneus brevis muscle. So the deep branch, what will do? It will pierce the extensor digitorum longus muscle. So it pierces the extensor digitorum longus muscle, and it runs in the anterior compartment of the leg along with the anterior tibial artery. So posteriorly, along with posterior tibial artery, tibial nerve will run, and along the anterior aspect, along with the anterior tibial artery, the deep peroneal nerve will run along with it. So what are the muscular branches? So it will supply the anterior and the lateral. Lateral component is supplied by the superficial peroneal nerve, and anterior compartment of the leg is supplied by the deep peroneal nerve. So in anterior compartment of leg, there are dorsiflexor of ankle and extensor of toe. What are the dorsiflexor of ankle? These are your tibialis anterior muscle, and extensor of toe are your extensor hallucis longus and extensor digitorum longus. And everters of foot are your lateral compartment of leg. So what are the everters of foot? Peroneus longus and peroneus brevis. So these are about the muscular branches. Now there are other branches also that you should know. These are the sensory branches. So sensory branches, one, it will give rise to lateral sural nerve. So sural nerve was, proper sural nerve was given by the tibial nerve, and lateral sural nerve is given by the common peroneal nerve. And you can see one more branch is there, that is called sural communicating nerve. So sural communicating nerve comes and joins with the sural nerve proper from the tibial nerve. So these two will form the sural nerve. So sural nerve itself will have another branch from the common peroneal nerve, that is the sural communicating nerve. So this will penetrate the deep fascia and run along the posterolateral aspect of the leg. So there are two sensory nerves that you should know. So two components more you should know about the common peroneal nerve. So sensory supply of leg and foot. These pictures shows both contribution from the tibial nerve as well as the common peroneal nerve. So you can see whole of the leg and foot is supplied by the sciatic nerve, that is common peroneal nerve and tibial nerve, except the area over here that is supplied by the saphenous nerve, which is branch of femoral nerve. So you can see this pink area is supplied by the common peroneal nerve. Which branch? The lateral sural nerve. Okay. Superficial peroneal nerve will supply the lateral aspect of lower half of leg and dorsum of foot. So this will be supplied by the superficial peroneal nerve. This blue area in the first wave space is supplied by the deep peroneal nerve. Okay. So peroneal nerve will supply the leg and the dorsum of foot. Okay. And then the sole of the foot is supplied by the tibial nerve, and tibial nerve will have three branches, as I have already talked about. So one is the medial plantar nerve. So this medial plantar nerve will supply the medial 3.5 muscles, and lateral plantar nerve will supply the 1.5 part of the foot, 1.5 part of the foot, and the calcaneum heel will be supplied by the medial calcaneal branch. So medial calcaneal branch will supply the heel area. So three branches of the tibial nerve will supply the whole of the foot, and there are some overlapping contribution from the sural nerve, which will supply the usually the posterolateral aspect of the foot, and some contribution from the saphenous nerve, but these are all negligible. So mostly sole of the foot, you have to remember three nerves. One is the medial plantar nerve, lateral plantar nerve, and the medial calcaneal branch. All are branches of tibial nerve. So now we have talked about the sciatic nerve proper and its branches, tibial nerve and common peroneal nerve. So we'll talk about what are the causes of sciatic nerve injury. So now most commonly sciatic nerve injury happens due to a badly placed intramuscular injection in the gluteal region. So this is the number one cause of sciatic nerve injury. Other causes are posterior dislocation of hip, any pelvic fracture, any posterior wall of acetabulum fractures and all can cause sciatic nerve injury. Any penetrating injury to the gluteal region like gunshot injuries can cause sciatic nerve injury. And another unusual cause is your anticoagulant therapy. So patient on anticoagulant therapy can have intraannular hemorrhage, and this can also lead to compression and cause sciatic nerve injury. And another common cause of sciatic nerve injury is iatrogenic. So any surgery that involves the pelvic area. So if you are doing a total hip replacement or you are fixing an acetabulum fracture, you can injure the sciatic nerves. So usually from the posterior aspect, if you are approaching the hip from the posterior aspect, you can invariably injure the sciatic nerve. So usually sciatic nerve injuries, they are not complete. So usually they are incomplete. And in 90% of the injuries, the common peroneal part of the sciatic nerve is affected. So this is a very common question that you might be asked in the Viva as well. So why the common peroneal nerve part of the sciatic nerve gets affected commonly? So there are broadly four reasons. One is that the fasciculi of the peroneal nerve is very large and it has less connective tissue, so it has less cushioning effect from the trauma. So because they have large nerve bundles, they are also vulnerable to ischemia as the vessel nerve has to supply a larger diameter. So these are the two primary reasons. So why they get affected easily. Another is they are tethered at sciatic nerves and the fibular neck. So there is less excursion for them to occur. So this is another cause of why peroneal nerve is injured commonly. And another is lateral position of the peroneal nerve. Compared to the tibial part, the peroneal part lies more laterally and is more prone for compression and injury. So effect of sciatic nerve injury. So whenever you talk about effect of any nerve injury, you are talking about motor effect and the sensory effect. So sciatic nerve usually supplies all the hamstring muscle from the tibial and the common peroneal nerve. So all the hamstring muscle will be affected and all muscles of leg and foot will be affected. So this will lead to your foot drop because all the muscle of the leg and foot are paralyzed, and your ankle reflex will also be absent because this is mediated by nerve root S1 and S2 which are involved in the sciatic nerve. So what this leads to, if your hamstring is affected, your flexion of hip and extension of flexion of knee and extension of hip will be weak, not absent. It will be weak because flexion of knee can be carried out by your gracilis and obturator muscle, and extension of hip can be carried out by your gluteus maximus, which is supplied by the superior gluteal nerve. So patient can still extend their hip and flex their knee, but all the movements of leg and foot will be affected. So patient cannot dorsiflex or plantarflex their foot or evert or invert their ankle. Coming to the sensory effect, so usually whole of the leg and foot area will be affected except the area supplied by the saphenous nerve, because saphenous nerve is a branch of femoral nerve and the middle aspect of the leg will be unaffected. So, so motor effect as I've already discussed. So there will be all the muscle of foot and leg are affected. So you can see a marked wasting of this muscle. So there will be wasting of the muscle below knee, and there will be weak flexion of the knee because still sartorius and gracilis are intact and they can do flexion of knee, and hip extension is also weakened because gluteus maximus still can extend the hip. So if all the muscles of leg and foot are paralyzed, patient will have a plantar flexed position of the foot. This is because of the gravity and weight of the foot. So this will lead to what is known as foot drop. And because of this foot drop, patient doesn't want to drag their leg. So what they will do is they'll flex their hip and knee more than usual. So this will give to a stamping gait because they cannot control the foot coming down from a higher position to the ground. So this will lead to a stamping gait. So sensory effect, again already I have discussed, only the area supplied by the saphenous nerve will remain intact. So this will be this blue area which supplies the middle aspect of the leg. Now this was about the sciatic nerve injury. So what if after sciatic nerve is divided into tibial component and peroneal nerve? So what if only the common peroneal nerve is injured? So usually the common peroneal nerve, it arises from the posterior aspect to the anterior aspect and it winds around the neck of the fibula in the posterolateral aspect. So this position is very superficial. So any sort of traction, compression or pressure in this area can lead to a common peroneal nerve injury. So usually this common peroneal nerve is injured in fracture of neck of fibula. So if you see an X-ray where there is neck of fibula fracture, you always have to suspect common peroneal nerve injury. So this can be injured because of the fracture of the neck of fibula, and other causes are from the pressure. So any sort of pressure, it can be from cast or splint, or it can be some sort of ganglion that arises from the superior tibiofibular joint. So any ganglion or any tumor of the head of fibula that compresses on the common peroneal nerve can lead to common peroneal nerve injury, or any sort of varus injury where the leg goes into varus. This leads to stretching of the common peroneal nerve on the lateral aspect of the knee. So this can also lead to common peroneal nerve injury because of traction. So what will be the clinical feature? Now, as you all know, this common peroneal nerve will supply the anterior and the lateral compartment of the leg. So anterior compartment are the dorsiflexor and lateral compartment are the levators. So if your dorsiflexor and levators are paralyzed, you have the opposing muscles. What are the opposing muscles? These are the plantar flexor and your inverters. So plantar flexor and inverters are supplied by the tibial nerve. So if tibial nerve is intact, this will lead to a plantar flex foot and inverted attitude. That we call it as equinovarus. Equino because it is plantar flex and varus because it has gone into inversion. So usually patient with common peroneal nerve injury will have equinovarus attitude of their ankle. And sensory, so sensory, as I have already discussed, it supplies the lateral aspect of the leg and the dorsum of the foot. So this whole area will be affected. Only the sole of the foot and posterior middle aspect of the leg. Posterior middle aspect of the leg is supplied by the sural nerve, and the sole of the foot is also supplied by the tibial nerve, medial, lateral and medial calcaneal branches. So this will be intact. Other than that, everything will be involved. So as you can see, patient is having a equinovarus. So this is typical of equinovarus deformity because of common peroneal nerve injury. And whole of this dorsum of the foot and your leg, lateral aspect of the leg is having sensory deficit. So this area, small area, is supplied by the sural nerve, remains intact, and this area denoted by figure number 1 is supplied by the saphenous nerve will remain intact. So in tibial nerve injury, now coming to the tibial nerve injury, usually tibial nerve injury is very rare until unless it is an open injury, because tibial nerve will run deep to the soleus muscle. So this is very deep in its position. Because of that, usually tibial nerve is not injured. So in open injuries, you can have tibial nerve injuries. So if you have any laceration over the posterior aspect of the leg, you have to suspect about tibial nerve injury. And if you have laceration, this will lead to complete division of the nerve. So you can have a complete injury of tibial nerve. So now tibial nerves, what are they? They are plantar flexor of the foot and inverters of the foot. So two muscles, inverters of the foot. So plantar flexor and inverters are paralyzed. So as a result, the opposing muscle, what are the opposing muscle? Dorsiflexor and inverters of the foot. Okay, these two muscles will pull the foot into calcaneovalgus deformity. So calcaneo means dorsiflexion and valgus means eversion. So patient will have a calcaneovalgus deformity, as you can see in this picture. So this picture is showing a calcaneovalgus. The foot is dorsiflexed and it is everted. So dorsiflex, that is calcaneus deformity, eversion, that is valgus deformity. So because the tibial nerve is injured, tibial nerve will supply. So it gives rise to your sural nerve that supplies the posterior middle aspect of the leg, posterior lateral aspect of the leg and your sole of the foot. So patient will have ulcers in the sole of the foot because it is insensitive. So this is about the sensory deficit of tibial nerve injury. Now coming about treatment. Now treatment as such, whenever you have sciatic nerve injury, most of the time sciatic nerve injury is incomplete nerve injury. So you have only the common peroneal nerve part that is affected. So patient will have foot drop. And most common injuries in sciatic nerve injuries are traction injuries. So if you have traction injuries, so you in these cases these are all neuropraxic injuries. So neuropraxic injury by rule will come back. So in these cases you have to do what you have to observe. So you have to at least observe for 6 weeks to 3 months time. So you have to give the nerve to recover on itself. So usually your neuropraxia and your rhizotomesis will recover. So this you can observe. Sometimes you might have a laceration injury in cases of tibial nerve or in cases of your sciatic nerve as well. So in those cases you have to do a repair. Now I've already talked about the types of repair: primary, delayed primary or secondary in my lecture on nerve injuries. So you can do nerve repair if there is complete transection of the nerve, or if the segment of nerve is damaged. In those cases, you can do nerve grafting. Okay, and whenever you are waiting for the nerve to recover, now you have to make sure that the involved joint does not go into contraction. So for that cases, you have to give a ankle foot orthosis. So you have to maintain the neutral position of the ankle. So for that, you have to give ankle foot orthosis whenever you are observing, or whenever you have done a repair and you are expecting the nerve function to come back. So in those cases, in the meanwhile, you have to give an ankle foot orthosis. And if after 1 year also there is no function, return of nerve function, in those cases you have to do a tendon transfer. So in most cases, in most sciatic nerve injuries, these are incomplete injuries. So only your common peroneal part is gone. So you have your tibialis posterior intact, which is supplied by the tibial nerve. So what you can do an Ober's transfer. So posterior tibial tendon comes from the posterior aspect, and you are transferring it to anterior aspect. So what it does, now it becomes a dorsiflexor of the ankle. So after tendon transfer of the tibialis posterior, patient can now dorsiflex their ankle, which is very important, so that they don't have that foot drop or stamping gait. So you can do a tendon transfer. So for example, if you have a tibial nerve injury and you have your tibialis posterior paralyzed, in those cases your tibialis anterior can also be transferred from the anterior aspect to the posterior aspect of the leg, so that now it becomes an inverter of the leg, and your other dorsiflexors like your peroneus tertius, extensor hallucis, longus, and extensor digitorum can substitute for the tibialis anterior to take over as a dorsiflexor of the ankle. So in those cases also you can do a tendon transfer. So that's all for today. If you have any question, you can ask in the chat box. Okay, the treatment portion. So I'll again try to summarize the treatment portion. So most of the sciatic nerve injuries, these are all incomplete nerve injuries. So what happens in those cases? You expect the nerve function to come back. So in most cases, you are doing an observation alone. So you have to wait for at least 6 weeks to 3 months for you to intervene. So in those 3 months time, what you will do, you will observe. And when you are observing, you have to give an ankle foot orthosis, because you want to maintain the neutral position of the ankle. If you have any laceration injury or any open injury where you suspect there is division of the nerve, in those cases you have to do a repair. Now repair can be primary if you do it within 6 to 8 hours. It can be delayed primary if you do it in days, or it can be secondary if you do it in weeks. So you can do a repair. Still, if you have repaired the nerve function won't come back in a day or two. It will take time. It will take months for the nerve function to come back. So in those cases also, you have to make sure you prescribe ankle foot orthosis to keep the ankle joint in neutral position, because if you don't give ankle foot orthosis, patient foot will go into plantar flex position. So if patient develop a contracture with their ankle in plantar flex position, they cannot walk properly. So to prevent that, you have to have your ankle in neutral position. That's why you have to give an ankle foot orthosis. And if after 1 year also, if nerve function does not recover, so what you have to do, you have to substitute whatever is missing. You transfer the nerve from another part to give that function. So in most cases, the common peroneal nerve is injured, so the dorsiflexor of ankles are gone. So what you can do, you can do a posterior tibial tendon transfer. So in these cases, posterior tibial tendon, which is an inverter of foot, will come anteriorly and become a dorsiflexor of the ankle. Okay, about the test for sciatic nerve injury. So whenever you have sciatic nerve injury, you are testing 3 things. One is your sensory component, another is your motor component, and your reflex. So if you have now your reflex, your ankle reflex will be absent. Motor, for sciatic nerve injury, your hamstrings will be affected. So if your hamstrings are affected, you cannot flex your knee. So knee flexion will be weak, and your hip extension also will be weak, because hamstring muscle will do 2 things. They are flexor of the knee and extensor of the hip. So those things will be affected. And your sensory examination. Sensory examination, you have to test the area supplied by the sciatic nerve. So that will be your whole of leg and foot. Whole of leg and foot will be insensate, or there will be decreased sensation. So can you be more precise? What exactly do you want regarding foot drop? So you want me to talk about foot drop in detail, or any specific thing is that regarding foot drop? Okay, to summarize then, okay, fine. So to summarize, sciatic nerve is a branch of your sacral plexus. So from sacral plexus, you have contribution from your L4, L5, S1, S2, and S3. You will have two components, your common peroneal part and your tibial part. Tibial part will have tibial part has contribution from S3. Common peroneal part will have contribution from L4 to H2 only. There is no contribution from S3. Usually it is formed from the sacral plexus, then it passes below the piriformis muscle. It enters the gluteal region. In gluteal region, it is under cover of gluteus maximus. Then it passes into the posterior compartment of the leg, thigh, in between your adductor magnus and your long head of bicep femoris. In the lower 1/3 of the leg, it will divide into two branches, tibial and the common peroneal part. Tibial nerve will supply the posterior compartment of the leg, which are your plantar flexor and inverters, and common peroneal nerve will supply the anterior and the lateral compartment of the leg, which are dorsiflexor and inverter of the foot. So if you have injury to sciatic nerve, you will have what is known as foot drop, because your and dorsiflexors are not working. So because of gravity, the foot will go into plantar flexion. So this is what is known as foot drop. And when patient tries to walk, there is no dorsiflexion. So what they'll do is they'll flex their hip some more, so that they don't drag their foot. So in that case, there will be a stamping gait, because they cannot control their leg coming down from a height. So they will have a stamping gait because of foot drop. And regarding treatment, most of the nerve injuries are incomplete. So that's why what you can do is you have to give the patient AFO. You can observe if there is any open injury, you have to do a repair. If after 1 year also there is no return of nerve function, in those cases you have to do a nerve transfer. Okay, that's it. And call it off. So I'll call it off. Thank you.